Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Today I'm looking at a book which has come to us from Edward Elgar Publishing. It's an important book and it's an interesting book to look at a particular area which may be of interest, I think, to quite a wide range of lawyers, but certainly those lawyers who are involved in environmental and international issues. The title of the book is Thought, Law, Rights and Action in the Age of Environmental Crisis, and it's been edited by two people, Anna Grear and Evadne Grant. As I've indicated, it comes from Edward Elgar Publishing. They're a family business. They produce very useful books at the higher end of the intellectual scale, certainly for legal texts. And they both have helped to academic researchers and also I think to practitioners who have general love and interest of the subject of law and its associated areas of activity, jurisprudence, philosophy and politics, to name just but a few. Now, Elizabeth and I talked about this book in some detail. It's available as an eBook and online as well. And we gave the title of our review this: Explaining the Uneasy Connection Between the Environment and Human Rights. We've got a lot of books on human rights at the moment. Many of them are very important wherever you stand in the debate. But this is another one that's very useful. It's a fascinating front cover as well, looking at all these tree stumps. But there's the front of the book. There's the spine, and then there's the back. As I say, it runs to something approaching 300 odd pages, not particularly big, just over 300. There's the index for you there, right at the back. And then after the index, you go straight into the specific chapters. Now, there is a lot of footnoting, which is included all the way through. You don't have actual paragraph numbering, but you do have subheads which are numbered, which is the easiest way of finding. Of course, therefore, the index at the back deals specifically with page numbers. If we go to the front of the book, we've then got, there is the front page there. Then you've got the actual parts that make up the book itself. It's an edited work, so you've got the names of all of the people who've been involved in participating as contributors. There are 4 parts there. Then you've got the list of contributors. I'll just leave you to see those there. I can't mention them all by name, but they're very extremely experienced people. Then you've got a whole range of different case law from different places, including a few from the UK. Then you go straight into the introduction, which is quite important, and looking specifically at thought, law, rights and action in an age of environmental crisis in search of better future histories. Now, the problem we have about this book is that it's not the easiest book in the world to read. I found it quite difficult to read in places. I think possibly that may be partly because the subject matter is really quite complicated and you have to have, I think, a fairly clear head to try to follow exactly what the trains of thought are. Although I believe that the book has tremendous value, certainly within environmental law in particular. Now, this is what we say about the book, because the issues of environmental law, the environment itself, green issues, and human rights are inextricably linked, and they are basically living side by side in the 21st century, and we've got to know exactly where we stand in terms of our own rights and what we are doing with our environment. So this is what we say about the book. Both human rights lawyers and environmental lawyers should find themselves intrigued by this book, published recently by Elgar, because it certainly advances understanding and discussion of the links and interfaces between the environment and human rights in 2015 onwards. And that's really where we are, because this is an offering, if you like, of how we're going to look at these matters in the future. The two editors, who are Anna Grear and Evadne Grant, head a team of 9 other learned contributors, mainly from the United Kingdom and North American universities. And in their view, human rights and the environment form an uneasy connection in, as the title indicates, an age of environmental crisis. Well, that's one way of looking at it. We've had a whole series of different words used for climate change, whatever. But we've had this, with great respect to them, in the many decades I've been around, we had all of these discussions and debates in the 60s and 70s, and that's within good living memory. So it's not as though we haven't thought about this before. It's just that I think the point they're getting to is we are getting much more nearer some of the crunch problem areas that we have. And of course the real difficulty, with great respect, is not necessarily about what we're doing in Europe or America. It may be looking elsewhere, without mentioning any names. Let me continue with our review. This edited collection of essays was inspired by a workshop held at the International Institute for the Sociology of Law in Anati, Spain in 2012, and it was entitled Human Rights and Environment in Search of a New Relationship, and it was coordinated by Grear. Now, she described the papers that emerged as exploring aspects of the philosophical, legal and practical dimensions of the relationship between human rights and the environment. And it's a pervasive theme, she says, which was the importance of re-establishing vital connections not only between human rights and the environment, but also between rights and between individuals, communities and rights. So you can see the fairly broad approach that we have concerning the role of the citizen within the state and the whole issue of community and national and international rights, all of which are blended together. If you're still with us, then you might conclude that the contributors, but not some and not all of them, tend to prefer the philosophical legal approach to these issues rather than the purely practical. That's as may be. The fact is that we've got something which is a contribution to the debate. Part 1 of the book focuses on philosophical investigations, referring variously to Hegel, Kant, Heidegger, Descartes and a lot more people, many of whom we know and love. The great pioneering environmentalist Rachel Carson gets a look in as well. Reference is made to her seminal and rightly famous Silent Spring and the ad feminam treatment meted out to her by the science skeptics of her time and still in ours. Of course, that's the problem that we are facing even today. Actually, her book, although controversial, was almost universally admired and well received, I should add. However, the comment is also made that the testimonies it continues to generate, and we quote, expose some of the sexed, gendered specificities concealed beneath the facade of the presumptively generic epistemic, I'll get it right in a minute, and moral subject. So you see a lot of words there. End of quote. Now, I've got to try to understand what that means, because like a lot of the book, there are a lot of words that I did find some difficulty with. Generic epistemic, I think that is what it means. There's a presumption. They're looking in general terms then probably at the moral substance of some of the arguments. So whether one agrees or not with these views, one might well long for a little bit of crystal clarity from Miss Carson's lucid prose, including me being able to pronounce some of these words, which I think I understand, but if in doubt, look in the dictionary. It's always a good idea. Let me conclude, because I do actually find this book interesting. It was very thought-provoking. Let me say this. Speaking of controversy, much of the content of this work, which is of a high scholastic and research level, presents a range of commentary which is undoubtedly thoughtful, innovative and highly challenging. One could argue that it does indeed fulfil its most important stated aim of vexing the human environmental legal interface, and it remains, I think, a valuable contribution to the continuing debate. Sorry they use words like human environmental legal interface, but I think we know what they mean. I think that the English could be just a little clearer for us, but however, it's a great contribution, thank you. The publication date is cited at 2015. Here it is again. You can see from the title as well that it's not actually the easiest title in some ways to follow. There's the back. But opening it up in the middle, as I say, I didn't find it the easiest read. There are a lot of abbreviations as well, so be careful with that. But you can see This is human rights and environmental protection in India. They're not shying away from some of the most important areas to look at. And in fact, when we look at the various subjects in the headings, activism and praxis, human rights practice, a means of environmental ends, you've got a whole range of other. Right at the end, part 4, multi-level reformulations. You can see again that the words being used throughout are words that I have to say had some difficulties with, and if I do, I suspect other people will as well. Notwithstanding, I think it's a very great help in our overall understanding of where we're going. So thank you to the editors and to the contributors, and of course to Elgar for maintaining such a high standard with their publications. Thank you. Bye-bye.